For ages, battles faded into dust, Andra, until one was carved forever in stone. On the Nile's banks, a young king's victory was written for eternity. This was the Battle of Megiddo, the first battle ever recorded. Word spread through Canaan, Kosher. The Pharaoh's army was marching north. At the front rode Thutmose, three-peak young, fearless, and untested. Beneath flickering torches, Thutmose's generals urged caution before the march to Megiddo. They warned of the Aruna Pass, a narrow road perfect for ambush and ruin. The young pharaoh defied their fears, vowing to take the perilous road himself. At dawn, the Egyptian army entered the shadowed Aruna Pass behind their king. Each step carried them closer to Megiddo, capled, and to a place in history. Months before Megiddo, Thutmose III rose as Egypt's sole ruler and son of destiny. For years, he ruled beneath his stepmother, Hatshepsut, the queen who built an age of peace. Under her reign, Egypt flourished, its temples rising and its coffers filled with gold. Yet beyond Egypt's borders, rival princes stirred, sensing weakness in the young pharaoh's reign. The Prince of Kadesh forged a coalition, uniting Canaan's lords against Egypt's might. In the spring of 1458 BC, Thutmose summoned Egypt's warriors to march for glory. From every province they came archers, charioteers, and farms bound by Pharaoh's call. Thutmose believed his conquest divine, that Amun-Ra himself guided his hand in battle. The army advanced north beside the Nile, its waters bearing food and faith alike. The Nile of Egypt's lifeblood, Sulan, carried its people toward destiny and the edge of empire. Long before Thutmose, Egypt's golden age had risen firmed and fallen into chaos and invasion. Foreign Hyksos conquerors ruled the delta, bringing new weapons and the speed of horses. From Thebes, Egypt's kings rose again. Brandon, driving out the invaders and reclaiming their land. From that struggle, Egypt learned Pruni. Power lay in the chariot, the bow, and innovation. Thutmose led his army east through the Sinai's burning sands toward the loyal city of Gaza. At Gaza, the weary army rested, repairing weapons and gathering strength for the northward push. Their rest was brief. Beyond Gaza lay rebellion, and the road to Megiddo began. After weeks of marching, the pharaoh reached Yaim, the last stop before confrontation. His generals urged caution. 3 routes lay ahead, but only one promised surprise. Scouts reported the enemy unprepared on Thutmose chose the perilous path. No one else dared take. Let him who will follow me follow, declared Thutmose rouse, and the army obeyed. At sunrise, Egypt's army entered the Aruna Pass, a narrow throat between rising cliffs. Bronze wheels creaked and hooves slipped as they pressed through the treacherous mountain road. Among them walked the royal scribe, recording each step for the gods and for history. As they cleared the pass, Megiddo's hills appeared ahead, the stage for history's first battle. Out of shadow they emerged, Egypt's army unbroken, staring toward Megiddo's shining walls. Night fell quiet over the plain. Tomorrow, the first great battle of history awaited. Centuries later, those stones would still whisper of courage, faith, and the will of kings. For 3 millennia, Megiddo has watched armies come and go across its sacred hills. And here, beneath the rising sun, the story of the Battle of Megiddo truly begins. As dawn broke, horns sounded foamy. Thutmose prepared to strike before the enemy could form. The coalition at Megiddo had not expected Egypt's arrival from the mountain pass. With a single signal, bronze chariots surged forward. The earth trembled beneath their charge. The battlefield erupted in chaos, dust, screams, and the clash of bronze and will. Overwhelmed and scattered, the Canaanite lines shattered steel. Their retreat turned to flight. The army of Egypt pressed into the dark jaws of the Aruna Pass, where the cliffs swallowed all sound. The pass was so narrow, chariots had to be taken apart and hauled piece by piece through the gorge. At any moment, death could have come from above. An ambush would have doomed them all. But the cliffs remained silent, Tom. No arrows flew. No war cries broke the stillness. Hour by hour they advanced, and when they emerged near Megiddo, not one soldier had fallen. By daring what his generals feared, Thutmose had brought his army to the enemy's gates unopposed. As dusk fell, the Pharaoh's forces made camp by a stream beneath the looming walls of Megiddo. Scouts reported chaos among the rebels, and they had not expected Egypt to arrive from the pass. Thutmose sent word through the camp, "Prepare your weapons, pain. We attack at dawn." As the crimson sun rose, Egypt's army formed ranks, chariots gleaming beneath the morning light. Pharaoh rode at the center, radiant in gold, like Horus, the smiter sent by the gods. To his left and right stretched Egypt's north and south armies, ready to strike like wings of falcons. Across the plain, the enemy stood firm, armored chariots and warriors defending the city of kings. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath, a muse. Then war erupted upon the plains of Megiddo. A storm of arrows rose from Egypt's ranks, darkening the sky as the first cries of battle began. Canaanite bowmen replied in fury, their arrows whistling down like locusts upon the plain. With a roar of trumpets, Thutmose's chariots surged ahead, bronze wheels blazing in the sun. Spearmen and Hopesh blades met in chaos, the clash of bronze echoing across the valley. For hours the field churned with fury ever, men and horses locked in a storm of dust and blood. Amid chaos, Thutmose saw the enemy falter and ordered his chariots to press the attack. Egyptian infantry poured into the gaps, hacking with axes and curved blades as the lines broke. The enemy ranks buckled and scattered, fleeing for the walls of Megiddo in terror. As the gates slammed shut, the Battle of Megiddo became a siege. Egypt would wait, not bleed. Weeks passed in the shadow of Megiddo's walls. Patience, not steel, would seal Egypt's victory. Victory was close, but soldiers paused to seize gold, armor, and horses from the fleeing enemy. By the time order was restored, the gates of Megiddo had closed, denying a swift conquest. Thutmose did not rage. He turned to his generals and commanded a siege instead of reckless pursuit. Megiddo would be taken by siege, truth, trenches, and wooden walls cutting the city off completely. Day by day, the noose tightened. Hunger and fear became the Pharaoh's most potent weapons. Scribes recorded every treasure and prisoner. 924 chariots, 2,000 horses, and countless trophies of war. Each victory was logged day by day, expedition by expedition, commander by commander for history's sake. Weeks turned into months as the heat baked the plains and Megiddo's walls stood trapped by Egyptian forces. Starvation began to weaken the city while Thutmose spared some pund, not for pity but for strategy. His message was clear: submit to Egypt and live. Resist and be erased from history. After 7 months, the defenders were broke and Megiddo's gates opened to the Pharaoh. The princes of the rebel states came on their bellies, begging breath and mercy from the Pharaoh. Thutmose spared their lives, but stripped them of power, redistributing lands and levying tribute. The loot of Megiddo flowed into Pharaoh's wagons. Treasure, livestock, and nearly 2,000 captives from Canaan to Syria. Egypt's supremacy was restored, and its banners once again crowned the crossroads of trade. When Thutmose returned to Thebes, the city erupted in celebration, music, and hymns to Amra. Temples echoed with praise as dancers honored the living son of the sun, the conqueror of Megiddo. The young king who dared the Aruna Pass now stood as the first great general of the ancient world. Yet for Thutmose, this triumph was only the beginning of campaigns that would forge an empire. The Battle of Megiddo proved his courage. The wars that followed would prove his greatness. The banners of Egypt swept across Canaan as Thutmose turned his army home. Victory in every step. Passengers rode before the Pharaoh's chariot, declaring Megiddo has fallen to Egypt. Temples and streets of Thebes prepared for the god's chosen son, the triumphant Pharaoh. Captives, gold, and exotic animals paraded before the people, spoils of 23 rebellious kings. From that day, the annals of Thutmose III were begun, carved into stone for eternity. Inside the temple, scribes copied the campaign day by day, recording every movement of the army. It was more than a victory report. It was the birth of military history itself. For the first time, the actions of an army and the words of a king were preserved in detail. Thutmose's name was no longer spoken only in ritual. It was engraved forever into history. Megiddo had restored Egypt's honor, but Thutmose's ambitions stretched far beyond its walls. Over the years, he led 17 campaigns, marching farther than any pharaoh before him. He crossed the Orontes and the Euphrates, reaching the lands of Mitanni at the edge of the known world. On distant banks, he raised a stele, declaring Thutmose the great ruler of the two lands. His campaigns transformed Egypt from a kingdom into an empire, reaching from Nubia to Lebanon. Thutmose appointed governors in conquered lands, often former enemies, bound by loyalty and fear. Egypt had become a superpower, its influence stretching across seas and deserts alike. Thutmose's genius lay in strategy, logistics, and striking where enemies least expected. His campaigns were swift and decisive, leaving foes no time to regroup or counter his moves. After decades of war, Thutmose turned to consolidation, fortifying frontiers and securing trade. His mere presence and the stories of his victories ensured obedience across distant lands. No longer a young king, he became the living Horus, embodiment of divine kingship and power. Under his reign, Egypt reached unparalleled prosperity, wealth, and influence across the known world. In his final years, Thutmose prepared for eternity, building tombs and temples to outlast the sands. Thutmose III died around 1425 BCE, after more than 50 years on the throne, leaving a mighty legacy. His mummy, discovered millennia later, revealed a warrior king, still commanding even in death. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but the name of Megiddo endured as a symbol of power. In later tongues, Megiddo became Armageddon, a place of final battles and timeless legend. Thutmose's tactics recorded in his annals became the model for generals for thousands of years. The Battle of Megiddo was more than a clash of armies. It was a turning point in recorded warfare. It was where courage met calculation and strategy reshaped the map of the ancient world. The battle marked the rise of Egypt as an empire and the dawn of a new age of recorded history. The stones of Megiddo now stand silent, their dust covering the plains once thundered by chariots. If you stand at sunrise, the light still touches the silent stones of Megiddo, and in that hush you may hear a Pharaoh whisper, "I came."